But unfortunately, someone committed a hit and run on the missus car. Quite a bummer. She sent me some photos and I didn't think it was that bad until I saw it up close. Some good news, bad news. I don't know where to move forward right now. Basically, I just have to rip everything off the top. Welcome back to another episode of Bro Premier, guys. If you are new to the channel, we've been working on my 2005 Hyundai Tucson. I picked it up for $700. It has 136,000 miles, and I got it that cheap because, well, I mean, look at it. It needs a lot of work. It's pretty ugly. It also has either a timing issue, which I'm guessing is still the problem. Still might need a mass airflow sensor, might need an oil pressure sensor after last video. Thank you to my brother and MJC mentioning the oil pressure something sensor, but that might be the problem why it's leaking a lot of oil. It's also leaking a lot of coolant, which I believe to be the water pump, which is why the guy changed the head gasket, which is why it's out of timing. So, needs a lot of little things. All fairly cheap. It is a Hyundai. A lot of those parts are fairly cheap, especially off something like Parts Geek or similar. Anyway, my goal for this episode is to get into checking on the timing to make sure that this engine doesn't have any bent valves or anything of the sort, and I don't waste a bunch of money trying to fix something that's not worth fixing, and I should just get a whole new engine and slap it in. So that is my goal in the future. Probably tomorrow I'll start messing with that, maybe later today. But unfortunately, over the past couple days, someone committed a hit and run on the missus car. So check this out. Quite a bummer. She sent me some photos and I didn't think it was that bad until I saw it up close. So it looks like someone came in that either tried to back up the parallel park and they clipped, and they actually took some paint off here, which is the bummer. I thought everything else was just going to be a little bit cosmetic, but this is actually a slight dent and paint removed. That's a bummer. I'm not happy about that. It looks like after they came in, they hit this piece coming in and then they went back out and hit it again coming back out, and they basically just ripped. I mean, they literally ripped the plastic in half here, which is awesome. Knocked out all the little pieces that hold into the other plastic. So my goal for right now is to try to tidy this car back up for the missus. She loves this thing. About 2 years ago, maybe 3, I tried to convince her to trade it in, get a new one. They were gonna offer like 15 grand, and it had 120,000 miles on it at the time. So it would have been 15 grand towards the new one, but she says she didn't like the new one. She loves this car. This is her car. So gonna try to pretty up the best we can for now. I don't think I'm gonna do any like body work trying to fill in those dents at the moment. Maybe in the future, because I do want to do the front end still. I think some of you guys still know the front end's kind of busted, but that's gonna be a big ordeal. Oh God, it's gotten worse. Yeah, so we gotta fix the whole front end already, which was another one hit and run. Someone backed in with a tow hitch, totally destroyed the front end. But that's gonna be another day. I'm probably gonna do that after I get the Audi fixed, because then she can take the Audi to work for a few days. I can work on all this, get it all pretty for her. I wanna do things up here, like the sunroof is starting to peel. It just needs a lot of little things to bring it back to prime. But for today, I would like to tackle this thing and see how far we can get. I've never taken any body panel off this car. It's her baby, so I really don't like to mess with it, to be completely honest. It's like a God forbid scenario, but I need to fix it because it's really bumming her out at the moment. That's my goal for right now. I'm gonna yank this thing off, and at the very least, the first thing I'm gonna do is start plastic repair here. Try to get it to my best ability to be back to where it was so that we can slam this thing back on and it adhere and look correct. Probably gonna be a tiny little bit of paint chips left. I'll probably fill in with a Sharpie or just a dab of little black paint just to hold it over, but at least it'll fit correctly. So anyway, that's the goal. Let's get at it. All right guys, I got the bumper off. Upon ripping it off, I saw that there's a little more damage, a little more things I had to worry about. I did have to run to Harbor Freight and grab some rivets. It seems that this whole thing is riveted in, but check it out. So this is the torn piece that I was showing you guys earlier. And it's hanging on just by a thread. This little strand is all that's holding this on. So I'm a little nervous about screwing this up. But first what I have to do is actually drill out these rivets. And then what I want to do is take off this whole interior section. And then I might end up hitting this with the torch. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, first what I would like to do is actually start drilling out these rivets. Then I'll remove this, of course. And then I'm going to start plastic welding this piece back on. So I'm going to get started with that. I'll get back to you guys in a few. All right, so I was able to get that plastic shroud off. It was quite a pain. I'm pretty impressed with how strong those clips are on the inside of that whole thing. Pretty nuts. And the fact that this thing yanked all those off means that this person, whoever hit her car, definitely used some force. But now what I would like to do, as I mentioned before, is I want to plastic weld this back together. And then I also want to plastic weld this because I ended up ripping it when I was trying to get the bumper off. I didn't realize this was attached down below. So I'm gonna plastic weld this back together as well so it keeps the support, keeps it strong. So yeah guys, I'm gonna get started with that and I'll get back to you in a few. All right guys, I tried to plastic weld everything. Unfortunately, I think you saw that white yellowish plastic. I think the way that it's molded is probably similar to that of almost a foam. I think there's a lot of air bubbles in it. It's a very dry plastic. There's not a lot of oils to it. So it was just kind of burning it, but then disintegrating it, like become little dust particles that I could rub off. So I wasn't able to actually plastic weld it. In fact, if any of you guys do know what that style of plastic is, I'm guessing it's the difference between like polyurethane and something else, or polybicarbonate, I don't know. But if you know, please comment down below so I can kind of have that in the future to know if I'm messing with something I can fix or I can't. But what I ended up doing was I took some super glue and some epoxy to hold this thing on. So I super glued the actual corner back together, and then I put in some epoxy with an old metal bracket to one of the Audis that I worked on, the A4. I guess I worked on two A4s, but the A4 that had the messed up bumper, I pulled these all out and plastic welded myself. But I think it's going to be the perfect little metal bracket to hold all the epoxy and give this a nice stiff feeling that I can trust. So we'll see how it goes. Sorry about the noise. I have some guys working at the neighbors, so it's been a little tough trying to tape fix the car while they're working. We're kind of playing back and forth. But anyway, my goal for right now is I would like to heat up all the black plastics, basically do that whole little flame touch where they come back to life. So I want to do it on that one, and I want to do it on the bottom of the bumper. First, I need to clean them up good because I don't want to burn whatever's on the outside into the plastic. So I'm going to clean them up, then I'm going to give them a nice little heat to try to bring them back to life. So I'm going to get started. I'll see you in a few. All right, the plastics came out pretty good. I'm really happy with them. Definitely is gonna bring up the view of the car, put it that way. But yeah, they came out really nice, much more deeper black than what they were. So really happy about that. The bottom one especially came out awesome. Looks way better. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna start painting this spot. I'm gonna probably cut it back, get that chunk that's hanging there off a little bit. And then I'm probably gonna come over to the corner that was hit and scraped. Yeah, it chipped pretty good. So I'm gonna sand this down, probably with like a Scotch-Brite, just get it pretty dang good. I'm gonna put in some primer in the back here, and then I'm gonna put over just some regular black that I have. Oh yeah, I do have some like all black, like that perfect match all black that I got once. That should look pretty good there. So yeah guys, I'm gonna get started doing that. I think by the time that dries, I should have the other stuff done. We should be able to put this thing back on. So that's the goal. Let's get at it. All right, I finished painting everything up. It came out pretty good, and every other scuff, scratch thing pretty much cleared off this thing, enough to the point where it's no longer like an eyesore. It'll barely be noticeable. So I'm really happy how good this came out. So check it out. I mean, after a nice buff, I mean, even right now, it looks a lot better than what it was. This whole thing was covered in white scuff. So after a nice buff, this will really shine up nice. And then this paint came out really nice. I mean, again, there's a little ding there. Yeah, you're gonna notice it, but at least there's not a solid white line here anymore. It'll barely be noticeable once the bumper's back on. And then something I totally forgot about, and I just kind of threw in there, is I needed to plastic weld this little tab back on, which is pretty good now. I'm pretty content. I got 3 pieces of that metal in there. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think we're good. All it has to do is basically tie into this to hold the bumper in the correct position. So I think it's gonna be fine. So the next thing I would like to do is to put that plastic piece down there back in here, and then I want to re-rivet the little mounting hole back on here, or the washer. So basically this little piece I want to re-rivet back on here, and then after I do that, I'm going to put it back on the car. So that's the goal for right now. I'll see you in a bit. All right, guys, it is the next day here. I ended up finishing up last night. I didn't even show you the other side of me buttoning it up. It got so dark you couldn't see anything in the screen. I think you guys probably saw that, but it came out really good. I'm really happy. 1 day's worth of work, cleaned everything back up. So check it out. Now there is still some of this scuff mark going on, which I'll probably buff out in another time. But for right now, as far as the damage, the actual damage, I'm really content with how well it turned out. In fact, I might throw some buff on it here in a little bit, but I won't bore you guys with that because it's just gonna be that little panel. I'm really happy. I mean, remember, this whole thing was ripped out. This whole side was ripped out. This was torn. You can't even see any of the yellow plastic anymore. I'm really happy. That little super glue with epoxy mix and that piece of metal in there holding it. Really impressed. Worked out really well. And the other side lined up pretty good. This scuff still needs to be repaired. This is actually into the paint. That was actually one of the Mrs. fault. She kind of backed into something for years. She's never had a problem, and randomly within like 1 week she backed into something here that I cleaned up, and then like 4 days later that one. So weird. Never had a problem for the 10 years she's had this car, or 12 years she's had this car. Anyway, so that is it for the Challenger. I told you I want to start diving into the Hyundai. So I have been trying to do some research. I've been trying to download one of those e-manual online things, like the ones that I have the link down below. By the way, the Blaze coupon still works. I just got 30% off if anyone's interested. I'm not getting paid from that link anymore. I got to get a new one. But just if you guys are interested, I do get the OVA files. So usually I pay like, I think this one I just paid, I think it was 12 bucks. And I think I'm going to get every Hyundai up until 2012. Every single one, every single manual. And it's digital, so you can kind of jump file from file. It's not like searching through pages and pages. You kind of start following through the keys. If you need to go back, there's a certain little tab to click this section and it pops you back to this part of the engine. It's pretty neat. Anyway, like I said, down below there's a link in all my descriptions. That link is expired. I don't make anything off of it anymore. But if you guys want to save money, when you go there, just put in Blaze. I think it actually gives you 20% off because it was 15 bucks. And then I put in Blaze and I got $3 off. So it must be 20%. And if you don't want the OVA file, it's a little hard. You kind of got to download this virtual box thing that all the mechanics use at shops. It's kind of a whole ordeal, but it does give you a lot of access. So instead of having one workshop manual for $21, you literally get 30, 40 years, every type of model. You can do it by VIN. It's pretty crazy. I use it on both the Audis, actually all three of the Audis so far, to do everything from panel work to redoing the head gasket. It's pretty impressive. And I do think they charge more actually for just a PDF of 1 year of one model. I think it's like 30 bucks for this, just this in a PDF version for just the 2005 Tucson. But I just got all the years, which is like 23 gigabytes worth of space for 15, well, now 12 bucks. So anyway, not trying to sell you. I know I really sounded like a sales pitch. That company has really come in handy. I'm surprised they're not way bigger than they are. They're definitely better than anything that you can get at the store. I get some guys like Paper, but for the amount of information you get and the simplicity with the amount of money, there's nothing that compares. Truly nothing. All right, I'm gonna stop my non-sales pitch, seriously. But what I would like to do is I put in that battery, and as I tried running it last time, I still got some check engine codes. I'm guessing definitely the mass airflow sensor, but I wanna see if anything else is coming up, like that crank sensor in the back. So if that's coming up, I would like to try changing that out. I did grab one from the junkyard, but first I just want to read the codes. I want to see if anything's even popping up abnormal, or maybe there's more codes now. So that's what we're going to do at this moment. Okay, we got 6 codes stored again. I'm going to guess they're the exact same ones. 3 stored, 3 pending. So first one is the crankshaft position. Okay, now number 2. Oh, pending. So number 2 is the pending one. Cylinder 1 misfire detected. That's new. Cylinder 3 misfire detected. 4, 2. Okay, so all the cylinders are misfiring, but the mass airflow sensor is fine now. So what I actually want to try right now is I'm going to unplug the mass airflow sensor, see if this thing will run better than when I have it plugged in. See what happens. Let's see. Let's see. It's so much quieter. So crazy. All right, I'm gonna try to get it to hold an idle. Then I'm gonna plug in the mass airflow sensor. See if it gets better. Okay, it's holding, it's holding. Let's see. Oh, no, no. Oh, mass airflow sensor works. Oh, sweet. Wow, it's at least idling. Oh, there it goes. Oh, there's all the stammer. All right, so I think I'm gonna try to change out that crank sensor, see if it does anything. See you in a bit. All right, some good news, bad news. I tried starting the car after installing the new used crankshaft sensor. Definitely something going on. I went from 6 codes to 11 immediately. So I do think the old one was shot. It wasn't reading anything correctly. I do think the engine is out of time as well. It's probably what caused any code in the beginning. But I think I showed you guys that this thing is cracked right down the center. So I think anyone would tell me that this thing is shot. There is oil in it. I could press oil in it out of the top when I separated this. Oh, there you go. You can see a little bit above my thumbnail. Pressing oil out of a sensor. So I'm guessing this thing is toasted. But with that said, the new one did spark a whole bunch of codes. Something about engine severity and lower end. All kinds of little things. But the worst part is, I don't know if you guys can see down there, but it started leaking oil all over again. And it's not from one of those sensors. It's not from the variable valve timing, and it's not from the oil pressure sending switch, something like that. It's not from there. It is directly below it, right at the head gasket level. It pours oil right over the block. This guy installed the head gasket wrong, which I should have known, just that we got to this point and there's still a bunch of problems. There's timing off. These are all things you should be checking if you're gonna put in this much effort to change a head gasket. Especially if you bought 2 blocks so far, like maybe you just don't know what you're doing. And usually when someone's overconfident or over cocky about something, usually they're not as great as they think they are. When I called this guy, kind of just to pick his brain, kind of see where I should move forward to, I just asked him if there was any places where he knew of like high oil pressure lines or anything like that, anything weird that might be causing that oil leak that we saw last time. And his response to me was, well, I don't know about any high oil pressure lines, but I know head gaskets. And unfortunately, clearly he doesn't, because if you saw in the last video, I think I showed another little screen grab of the oil is just covering the entire block. Starts right at the head gasket, bubbles out and goes down. Tried to keep it while I was running. I had the missus kind of running the car so I could see it dribble out, and for sure, it's right there, right at the head gasket line. So it sucks, because had it not gotten wet, I probably could have torqued it down or rechecked all the torques to make sure everything's correct. But now that it's wet, I have to take it out, brake clean everything, try to put in a new one. But I did just have an epiphany while some airplane was flying over. I just realized this guy told me he went through 2 blocks. This is his 2nd block. He's cheap. He didn't even put in a water pump when he knew most likely that could have been the failure point for the overheating and needing to do a head gasket. So he didn't even grab a water pump that even at O'Reilly's is probably 50 bucks. He didn't do that. He put 1 gasket in and then got a whole new head. So I'm sure he was out another $500, tried to start cutting corners and decided to use the new head gasket. I guarantee he tried to strap down the first head, realized he had 2 screwed up, stripped out holes up towards the cams. Then he took it all the way back out, put on the new head without buying a new head gasket. So I'm guessing this thing has been smushed, cranked down before, and now we're going through it all over again. So with that said, I'm trying to figure out if this is worth it. I'm gonna do some shopping online. I mean, Rock Auto is pretty dang inexpensive. I don't think it's gonna be too much. I'm gonna guess like 30 bucks probably for the head gasket, maybe another 40 for bolts. But right now I mentioned to you guys that I'm downloading all the manuals for all of Hyundai. So once that thing's done downloading, I'm gonna check out if I need to replace any other bolts, any other little parts along the way to complete this. If it's fairly reasonable, like 100, 150 bucks for the parts plus the water pump, if I can get all that stuff for that cheap, I'll probably go through with it and buy it. I am gonna verify that he got the right timing belt, just because I'm starting to assume that although his father was probably a mechanic, he probably wasn't the greatest at it. I feel like I'm beating this guy up, but it's just clearly there's been problems left and right tackling this thing. Anyway, I'm just not quite sure how crazy I want to go into this car. If it's 150 bucks, even if it's 200 bucks, it's a gamble. I guess in the end I could always buy another engine for 300 bucks from the junkyard from a smashed car. So I'll probably still take the gamble. So anyway, guys, yeah, I think that is going to be the end of this episode. I don't know where to move forward right now. Basically, I just have to rip everything off the top. At the very least, I have to do the head gasket again. So timing doesn't matter. I mean, I don't hear any engine slap. I don't hear any rod knock, anything like that. I do hear chain slap, so I'll probably order a chain tensioner. I'll probably just order a chain tensioner just in case he broke the last one. So I'll do a chain tensioner, probably timing chain with it, verify that the timing belt he got is actually correct, probably grab a water pump, and then see if we can get this thing back together running good. I'm a little nervous to dive too deep into this, but at the same time, I like the challenge. It's something new. I've never gone this deep into someone who's tried to fix it, clearly didn't, and then try to fix it again, hoping I get it right. But I don't think there's much more that could go wrong from this point. Here we go, and then something breaks. Fingers crossed, nothing else goes wrong. So anyway, guys, I do think that is going to wrap up this episode. I'm probably gonna go inside right now, wait for the manual to finish downloading. It said 6 hours, so it's probably gonna be a minute. Once it's done downloading, make sure I verified all the parts I'm gonna need, put in a parts order, and hopefully get this thing cranking by next week. Probably next Thursday, I will be able to start tackling the engine just from ordering the parts and taking time to get here. But next episode, I think I am gonna hit the junkyard up, try to go get the door, try to get all the little pieces to finish the exterior and interior, try to get all that wrapped up so maybe I can start painting in the next episode. Fingers crossed, we'll see what happens. But I think that's it. I think that's gonna wrap up another episode of Bro Premiere. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll catch you again on Sunday. Later, guys.